Good morning, folks, and welcome back to Wishwell Farms. In today's video, we have a lot of little things happening around the farm. First of all, we're going to start up here in greenhouse number 1 and flush out some of the irrigation lines in preparation for transplanting our very first hydroponic tomato crop of 2025. After that, we're going to be watering and fertilizing some tomato seedlings, and then seeding some habanero peppers, and then hopefully receiving a delivery of missing product that did not arrive on the truck 2 videos back. It just seemed to have vanished into thin air, but I think we found it and it's supposed to come today. And finally, we're going to talk about some of the high costs of growing hydroponic tomatoes. Some of these things I'm going to show you will blow your mind. Oh, nice and warm in here. It's a bit chilly outside today and a bit breezy. First thing I'm going to do is turn off this fan jet and the heaters so they don't come on while we're working in here. Much better, a little quieter, now you can hear me better. Hopefully you guys have noticed the improved sound quality, at least when I'm working or talking away from the camera. Love the DJI Mic 2. I think it sounds phenomenal. Let me know what you think down in the comments. All right, I came in earlier and turned the heaters on to 48 degrees. I was just keeping it at 40 in here so nothing would freeze, but I didn't feel like working in 40-degree temperatures and bundling up. So we got it at about 48 to 50 degrees in here. Feels comfortable. So here's something I just repaired last night. Every year it never fails. You know, I don't know if I've had a year in 25 years of growing hydroponic tomatoes that I didn't freeze and crack something somewhere. I always think I have everything taken care of, but I had this one. This valve was turned off. So it was right here. I had it in the off position. So obviously there was still some water sitting here and froze and cracked this to pieces. So we got that all fixed. So I came out here last night and already did 1 flush, but I always flush twice. And that's what I'm going to show you guys today, how I do that. So the first thing I did last night was I came out here and filled this blue mixing tank with hot water. And I put in some oxidate. I usually put in between a pint and a quart into that 50-gallon tank. And then I removed all of these irrigation lines from these risers. Loosened it up here, turned the elbow to the left, and blew all the junk out that may have settled in these lines since last fall. You can see some of the residue from it right there. After I see clean water coming out of the 5 lines, I reconnect the irrigation lines. And before I turn on the pump, I go to the other end and remove the 5 caps at the end of each line. Because there's always a lot of sediment in these lines as well. Even though I flush them twice in the fall before I winterize everything in here, you know, after the crop's removed, there's still residue in the lines in the spring. So I like to do 2 flushes. An initial flush to remove all the junk, and then I put the caps back on and pressurize it so it forces that hot water and oxidate into these little woodpecker drippers. They tend to get plugged up pretty easily. I let it set overnight to kind of eat away or break up the deposits in these, at least the ones that aren't running. And then I'll do another flush. I'm going to go down there and remove those caps right now. We're going to flush it out 1 more time, put the caps back on, pressurize it again, and hopefully a second time will free up a lot of these drippers that may have been plugged up, because it doesn't take much and they are costly. About 30 cents a piece now. There's 615 in this greenhouse. That adds up. So hopefully by doing this twice, the ones that may have been plugged up will finally release and start working, or become unplugged, I guess I should say. All right, let's get started. All right, turn off our cold water fill, and this is our hot water fill. Open this up. You can see this little flow meter right here, flow valve, I think that's what it's called. We're putting in about 4.75 gallons per minute right now. And we have hot water coming into the tank right now from the water heater. I think I'm just going to put a pint of oxidate in there. Here's a perfect example of what I was talking about. See all the residue that came out of the lines last night? That's a lot. And obviously we don't want to try to pump all of that through these drippers or it's just going to plug them up worse. So I take these end caps off. I'll just set them in the bucket. I'll turn the pump on and I'll come back here with a little cup and catch the water coming out. As soon as I feel warm water coming through and clear water, then I will run back to the front and shut off the pump. Then I'll come back here and put the cap back on. If you're thinking this is filling really slowly because there's only one hole in that pipe, what you can't see is down below there's a second hole. And I think I am going to turn it up. There. Now we got about 7 gallons a minute going in there. That'll fill it up a little quicker. You can see here all of my labels have kind of fallen off over the years. I need to replace those so other people know how to run this besides me. So here's the pump. Here's the billow pumps, which is that right there. And then irrigation 1, 2, 3, 4. You can kind of see the old numbers still there. But we're going to be running irrigation 1, that is this greenhouse, and then turn the pump on here. You can hear the pump running down there. Now we're going to take our little cup and go to the end and see what the water looks like coming out the irrigation lines. Okay, the water just started flowing. It's actually really clean. All right, looks good. Clear and warm. Let's go shut it off. Now that all the lines have been flushed out, I'm putting the end caps back on. These are self-flushing end cap valves, by the way. There's like a little rubber flap in there with a spring. So when there's pressure going on it, they close off. When the pressure releases, like when the pump turns off, it allows whatever's in the hose to go ahead and drain out on its own. And that helps a lot from getting buildup throughout the season, since they're kind of self-flushing after every irrigation cycle. So I have my hot water heater just on warm, not really hot. So the water really wasn't as hot as I like it. And a lot of that warm water I used up on that initial flushing. So I'm gonna let that thing heat up so I can make sure I get really hot water in here mixed with the oxidate before I finish flushing these lines. While that's heating up, I'm gonna take you up into the seeding house and we're gonna seed some habanero, jalapeno, and sweet banana peppers. A lot of these plants are looking a lot better. I mean, I don't like to see this. I have never had this happen in my 20-some years of growing these. I don't know why they all don't look the same like this. These are a foot tall. I don't see any buds forming yet, but any day we'll start seeing the first set of buds being developed in the whorl of that plant. We're gonna have to put some bamboo stakes on some of these. These are probably 13 inches tall, some of these tall ones. All right, this is where our seeding magic all takes place, right here in this kitty tub, but I will not be using that dirt there because my cat got in here and had her way with it, if you know what I mean. So I want to clean it all out, throw it in the field and start fresh. Whoo, I can smell it. Nasty. Oh man, that stinks. I wouldn't want to get my hands on one of those little surprises in there while filling trays, that's for sure. We use Lambert, germination, plugs, and seedlings. Been using this for probably 4 or 5 years. We used to use the big compressed bales, but since we don't have like a machine where it's all ground up and stirred up like Veggie Boys use, it's way easier for us just to use the loose fill bags because it comes out, you know, basically ready to go. Sometimes we'll wet it down, but usually it's wet enough and it makes it easier for seeding, and then we'll wet it all down after we seed and put them on the racks. It would be really nice to have something to dump all this in that ground it all up and filled the flats for us, but we just don't seed a whole lot of flats, only what we're growing in our fields. We aren't selling any, so it really doesn't take that long. Now, I used to sell about 500, 600, 700 flats of bedding plants, tomatoes and peppers, and mainly vegetables and herbs. Didn't really do any annuals or anything like that. If we did sell flowers like annuals and perennials and hanging baskets, we bought those from another grower. All right, since we're only doing 5 trays today, I'm not going to spend a lot of time showing this, but this is how we do it. We take our inserts. This is a 72 count pro tray. We just cover it real quick with loose fill and sweep it off, and that one is ready to seed. Then we bring our filled insert over here to the flat, and now it's ready to lay the seeds out across the top of the germination mix. I'm going to go ahead and get one seeded, and then I'm going to show you how we press the seeds in and bury them before we water them. All right, I have our 5 flats filled with germination mix, and now let's come over here to the spreadsheet. I would say the peppers is probably the simplest, least complicated things I plant on the farm, because I'm only planting these 5 trays of non-bell pepper. Here's our column of bell peppers. We plant 36 flats of bell peppers, and you can see I don't need to seed those for 2 more weeks, because today is February 27th. I just like to plant my hot peppers between mid and late February. We're going to be planting 1 tray of habanero, 2 trays of mammoth jalapeno, and 2 trays of sweet banana. I'm sure many of you are wondering, why am I not planting a whole bunch of different kinds of peppers? I used to. For many years, I've planted 50 different varieties of peppers. Just about anything and everything you can imagine. But I don't have a good market for it at my market, or even in Columbus at the farmers markets. So we backed off to just mainly bell peppers and a little bit of habanero and jalapeno for our sweet and hot pepper relish that we make in our commercial kitchen. So that's why we don't plant all those other kinds of crazy colors and shapes and hot and mild, sweet, this, that, and the other. There's a million different peppers out there. We like to keep it nice and simple, mainly just for having bell peppers that turn red and the hot peppers for our relish. All right, my trays are all seeded, and I actually only did 1 tray of banana peppers, not 2. So I only got 4 here today. If you're wondering why the seeds are blue, that is just a seed treatment that are coated on the seeds to help protect them from diseases while germinating and growing the transplant. Most of the seed companies that I deal with, you can also get untreated seed, raw seed. So if you're trying to be organic and don't want any kind of seed treatment on your seed, you can get it that way if you choose. So the way we do this is I just grab a stack of old inserts that are compressed together so tight I can't even get them apart anymore. And I just set it right on top of the seeds I planted and give it a gentle, even push all the way around. And I'll give it a little tap as I'm lifting it up, just in case some of the seeds stuck to the bottom. If the soil happens to be too wet, your seeds will stick to the bottom. And then you go to move it and they fall in the wrong spot. So you can see they're all pushed down about 1/4 inch. I'm going to give them just a little bit deeper of a push. I want them about 3/8. All right, they're all packed down in there, about 3/8 of an inch. And now I'm going to take this tray back over to where my germination mix is. Set it down in here. I like to have a clean base with no dirt under it as much as possible, because it will get caught up here in the webbing. I just set it down there, pull loose dirt across the top of it so it's completely covered, and then with my hands I just give it a nice even pack across the top and sweep it off. That's it. It's done. Ready to be watered and put on the germination mats. I'm going to show you one more from start to finish so you can see how fast this goes. So normally I'd have several tables set up with 20, 30, 40 flats all ready to be packed. Bring my packer over. That quick. Bring a packed one over here, put dirt on top, quick pack, brush it off, done. you don't have labels in there, you can do it even faster. Now I'm just going to give them a light watering. Don't want to knock any of those seeds out of there. Let that soak in a little bit, and I'll hit them like that 3 or 4 or 5 times until I know the water is soaked all the way through. Now I still need to water those a few more times to make sure they're fully saturated all the way through. And I think I'm just going to remove some of these grape tomatoes from one of the germination mats and put the pepper seeds right there, instead of taking them all the way inside down into my basement. Because I have tomatoes in my basement right now germinating, and tomorrow they should be sprouted, and in a couple days from now I'll be able to bring them out here. But there's no point in running those all the way into my basement when I can just do it right here. These tomatoes really don't need the germination mats that much anymore. Once they start taking off and looking nice and green and, you know, a foot tall, they're usually okay without heat mats. It's getting warmer out every day. We're getting more sunshine that lasts longer, so they really were only needed for that early part of February where they were really struggling, but now they're looking a lot better. All right, back out here in the main greenhouse, filling up the blue mixing tank with hot water with oxidate. As soon as that finishes filling up, I will turn the pump on and pressurize these 5 irrigation lines out here. And I'm going to show you what a good dripper looks like and what a bad dripper looks like, one that's plugged up that needs replaced. She's full. Irrigation 1. You can see it drawing down. So the lines are now pressurized. There's what we want. See how it's a very fast drip or almost a constant flow coming out of that stake? That is what we want them all to look like. Now let's find one that's not dripping. There's one right there. So I need to determine if it's just plugged up here at where the hose and the stake join up, or if there's junk in the line, or if it's the dripper itself. So I pull the line off and I can see that it is the woodpecker dripper. It's bad. And then I'll blow through the line. If I can blow air through it, I know it's good and I don't need to take it apart. Now, if I can't blow through it, I will take off the stake on the other end and smack it against something to release the junk in the hose, put it back together, and just set it on the ground here until I replace this dripper. So what I'll do is pressurize one line at a time, and I'll pull off all the bad ones and just leave them on the ground like this. And then I'll turn off the pump, and then I'll know which ones are bad. If the hose is pulled off, I know they're bad. If the hose is left on, I know it's good and ready to go. So as I walk down through here, if I see wet spots on the floor, that is a great sign. That means a lot of them are flowing. I see a lot of water. But I know there's going to be a lot of dry ones too. There always is. And some of them just have roots on them. See how that one's all plugged up with roots? You know, so we'll have to pull that apart and clean it out. And here's one that's dripping, but it's not dripping fast enough. It could just be partially plugged up there with those roots. I'll be able to smack them all right off. But if I pull it off here, I can see that it's good. See when I put my finger on there, it's squirting out a little squirt of water to the side. That means that's good. So this was just plugged up there. That'll be an easy, cheap fix. So we just have to go down each row, one row at a time, pull them all off, or pull off the ones that are plugged, and then put them back on, make sure they're flowing. And then we will be one step closer to transplanting our tomatoes in this greenhouse sometime early next week. So stay tuned for that and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on transplant day. There's the rest of my order. All right, looks like she's wrapped up good. right, very happy to have the coconut coir grow bags here at my farm and not lost somewhere in the Estes terminal in Huber Heights. So these came from Ontario, Canada, from AMA Horticulture. And like I mentioned in a prior video the other day, this is the second time this has happened, where they lost or dumped the coconut coir grow bags from the original pallet. It was all together on this pallet. And I think they wrapped this heavy item on top of these boxes, which I don't understand for the life of me. Of course they're gonna fall off in transit or moving from truck to truck or terminal to terminal, but glad I have them. And just in the nick of time, because next week we are transplanting grape tomatoes onto the coconut coir bags. And I think every year we get a new brand. This year it's Botanicor, producers of quality cocoa peat. So maybe they have a mixture of peat and coconut coir husk, I don't know. But these things do a great job in my grape tomato greenhouse. I don't use the Beto buckets or perlite in there. These are compressed and dry, so we'll get them all hydrated, laid out in the grape house, and hopefully have them ready to go for transplanting here in about a week or 10 days. I was talking to the driver of the Estes truck, and he rewrapped it even again after what they did at the warehouse. So I'm guessing this was on top of those boxes, it spilled off, they had to restack it, rewrap it, and then reship it 2 days later. Glad they're here. All right, I'm gonna head inside for some lunch, and as soon as I finish eating, I'm gonna take you guys back out to the greenhouse to show you an item that I had delivered by UPS last night that I ordered a few days ago as a spare part that I like to keep in one of my greenhouses for the hydroponic tomatoes. You will not believe how much this little item has been marked up. All right, I'm back out here in the greenhouse, just finished up my lunch. If you're curious about what I had for lunch, I had a bowl of Manhattan clam chowder and a ham and roast beef sandwich with spicy brown mustard, horseradish sauce, pickled onions, and goat cheese. I know that probably sounds like a crazy combination, and it's not something I was planning on. It's just what I found while I was looking through the fridge, and I thought it sounded like a good combination, and it was. Anyway, I wanted to discuss a few things in here as far as what it's costing me to raise a tomato plant from seed to harvest. And then I also want to show you something I just purchased that is unbelievably high priced and marked up a lot more than I think it should be. But first of all, let's start with the tomato plant. So I got me some notes here. Seeds cost me about an average of $1 per seed. Some are cheaper, some are more than that. And then the price of the cube, the little starter cube that comes in a slab, those are 8.5 cents per little cube, so they're not cheap. The 4-inch block that they get transplanted into is 54 cents. Perlite, which comes in a bag that fills 12 buckets, the bag cost me $14.70, so it comes out to $1.22 per bucket, so not too hurtful. The tomato hook that I trellis my tomatoes to cost 21 cents a piece, and the little tomato clip that clips the tomato plants to the string are 1 cent, but I go through at least 15 of them per plant, so let's just say 15 cents per plant. And then you add in propane, acid, and fertilizer. I broke it all down into 2,500 plants. So we got 615 in here, 1,000 in our long house number 2, 400 in our little house, or no, 500, and then 400 in our grape house. I kind of threw grape tomatoes in with the red round slicing tomatoes just to make this easier to crunch the numbers. So you add everything up, it is costing me $7.22 to raise a tomato plant. One thing that is not on my sheet is labor. Labor is a huge part of the expense of raising tomatoes, from picking, packing, and selling the product. So that is not included in there. That's going to take some time to figure out. I might just have to keep track of it this year to come up with a final number on what labor is costing me. And it does not include electricity. All the electricity to run all the fans continually. The fan jet, all these blowers in 5 greenhouses. That adds up. Oh, not to mention the tomato cooler, the electricity for running the air conditioner to keep that tomato cooler at 60 degrees. And then finally, it does not take into account my diesel fuel to take the tomatoes to the farmers markets to sell. And the reason I didn't include that is because we're already going to farmers markets anyway. So I left that out. But I think I could calculate that. The problem is it's not just going to be for raising a tomato and selling a tomato. It's going to include or encompass our entire vegetable farm. So that's why I left those 3 things out: labor, electricity, and fuel. So, like I said, the number is $7.22 per tomato plant. And we hope to pick between 15 and 20 pounds of tomatoes per plant. And we average around $3 per pound in retail sales. So we're going to gross somewhere between $45 and $60 per plant times 2,500 plants. I am curious to see what the total expense is going to be when I do finally include the labor, electricity, and fuel. So just wanted to touch on that real quick. I will definitely crunch these numbers again at the end of the season and give you a better idea of exactly what it cost me to raise a greenhouse tomato from seed to harvest. Okay, now for the item that I've been waiting to show you guys that is so unbelievably marked up in price. So I like to have spare parts for these bellow pumps. If one of these bellow pumps happens to get a crack in it, like in these accordion looking things, it will no longer suction fertilizer out of my 2 fertilizer tanks or my sulfuric acid tank. And it won't be proportioned properly into the blue mixing tank and then not fed properly to the tomatoes. So I like to keep an extra set of bellow pumps on hand, just 1 set, because usually every other year or so, something will go wrong or break or crack on one of these plastic parts. So I ordered 1 extra set of everything to rebuild one of these bellow pumps. From the O-rings, the little poppet valves that allow the fertilizer to be sucked into there and then proportioned into the tank. What else is in there? Yeah, just 3 or 4 plastic parts, some O-rings, and poppet valves. Those little O-rings are $10.50. I cannot believe it. And then the rest of those 4 parts, $165. I asked my wife this morning what she thought this was worth, and she said $30. And I agree. There can't be more than $10 or $15 worth of parts and plastic in that bag. I just cannot believe it. So these parts come from Gorman Rupp Industries. It's a pump company. And I believe I've called them before, but I don't think I can buy directly from them. Since they're the manufacturer, there has to be a vendor that buys directly from them, and then I buy from the vendor, thus the markup. Anyway, that's just one example of what makes produce cost so much to raise and why we have to charge high prices at our farmers markets. That's kind of why I wanted to share all this with you. How much it cost me to raise a tomato plant. And that's just one item out of 20 or 30 different items I grow on my farm. You know, there's a cost with raising everything. And this is just one little example of why we have to charge what we do at the farmers markets for our vegetables. I got to have something left over to make a living on and pay the bills, right? So just thought I should share that with you guys. I found it interesting, and it's been a long time since I've sat down and actually crunched the numbers on all the little things that it takes to raise a hydroponic greenhouse tomato. I'll get into more of this later on in the season, maybe towards the end of the season when I have a better handle on what labor is going to cost me and diesel fuel and electricity. I'd have to just go by past records. So we'll wait and go over those numbers again later in the season after we're wrapping things up. Alrighty folks, I think this is where we're going to wrap up today's video. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you all again real soon down on the farm.